Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Bulletproof For BJJ podcast. I'm JT.
Hey guys, I'm Joey.
And today we're talking about how stretching makes you stronger. Now,
That's fucking bullshit, bro.
oh, rubbish.
Makes
No.
you weaker.
Nah. This is the thing, guys. This is the confusion. A lot of people consider that strength training and stretching are like they're an antithesis to each other. They're opposite ends of the spectrum. This is simply not true. And what we're going to do today is actually get into how if you are able to spend some time stretching and doing mobility, this will unlock your ability to be stronger for BJJ. Because this, I feel, is one of the biggest myths. And for whatever reason, it's been popularized in the world of S&C, or maybe it's perception, like, oh, only sissies do stretching.
Yeah, it comes from the strength world.
It is a bit from the strength world. And I think also it's like if you haven't spent time doing certain amount of, because there's varieties of stretches, it's hard. It's hard. And when you actually develop, a certain amount of range, then you're like, wow, I got more to play with. That is the huge upside. And Joe, allegedly, has a very good saying relevant to this.
Ah, yes. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush.
God, whatever, man. That's not what we talked about, Joe.
Oh, let me go back through the files. Does anyone actually know what that line means?
Yeah, it's like it's about what you have. Like what you have is better than what you might have.
Ah, a bird in the hand is worth...
Potentially two in the tree.
Right, like if
two,
I've got
two
one.
that you could catch.
Ah, okay.
So that's relevant to, it's like, I have 1 cup of tea.
It's better than...
You take it away and you go, whatever I've got under this table is, hey! You know what I mean? Like,
right on.
It's often that people think there's something better around the corner when it's actually like, what you have right now is incredibly valuable.
And there it is, guys. We'll see you next week.
Okay, wrap it up.
All right, yeah, you can't strengthen range you don't have.
Say it again, Joe.
You cannot strengthen range you don't have. This is the thing. So, and this is where there's a battle, and most of you who are listening are probably not aware of this battle, right? But there is a battle in the strength realm amongst these people. JT and I are in that realm. Where it's like movement's important. No, it's all about mobility. No, it's about lifting heavy. No, it's about fucking glute active. Like there's just all this shit, right? You can go so deep on it. But one of these classic debates is that like stretching makes you weaker. Now, I believe there was a study done once many years ago of a bunch of high level weightlifters, and they measured their performance in a training session when some had stretched in the warm-up and some didn't. Now, they all did a warm-up, but some of them did long hold static stretching and some didn't. And I believe something like, and the reason my details on this are not too clear is because it was one study done of one small group done many years ago, which equates to, it doesn't fucking mean shit, but there was like a 3% drop in maximal power output in the population, the group that did the stretching.
Right.
So this got held up for a long time. The stretching makes you weaker, right? So in any case, couple of things for us to be mindful of in jiu-jitsu and for general performance is that we are not doing maximal strength training.
No.
This is not what we do. We're not going into the gym going, today is PB deadlift day again, just like it was last Monday and the Monday before. We don't do that, right? So already that's off the table because we're not searching for maximal power output. What we're searching for, and this is where you see the most fluid of jiu-jitsu fighters, this is where you see the greatest performance, is someone that has great range of motion. So they have the ability to express their joints to their full capacity, right? Their arms can go everywhere. Their hips are super mobile, great guard retention, like knee cutting, hips. Like, when you see high-level jiu-jitsu guy and like doing like a headstand pass or something, and they like switch the hips.
Yeah.
And you're like, fuck, that was so smooth, right? This is flexibility, right? But once we layer on top of that great strength, so you have great range, but then through that range you add great strength, this is the most potent combination.
Yes, indeed.
Now, we all want to get there, but most of us don't naturally have this range of motion.
Sure.
Most of us are a bit tight. Most of us are carrying a bit of tension because we sit down all the time, or, you know, maybe you're just born tired, or maybe
old injuries,
old injuries
over time.
That's right. Like, you know, yeah, there are some people who are naturally very flexible and they have a great benefit in this discussion. But for the majority of us, it's not something we're gifted. So if we just go and then do a bunch of strength training, you're only ever accessing whatever range you have through those joints. And yeah, you're going to get stronger. It is going to increase your performance within that range. But if you could increase that range, well, you could just increase your potential for getting stronger. Definitely. And your potential for moving more like a panther.
Yeah.
And this is the holy grail.
100%. And this is kind of funny because this quote comes from Charles Poliquin. So Charles Poliquin is, you know, the smartest meathead of all time. That's how I would classify him. And RIP to Charles. I learnt a bunch from him. I did one of his courses back in the day. He was super jacked, stocky, little guy, incredibly intelligent, French-Canadian, a legend of the S&C world, and has really...
That's strength and conditioning for anyone who doesn't know.
S&C, not just NC. But, I mean, look, he said, he was talking about people squatting to 90 degrees. He was like, why do you do half squats? That's what he would say. He would see people like power lifters, all kinds of things. He was more on the bodybuilding tip. But he would go, well, if we just add up all your half squats and put them together, you only did 5 reps. You know, he was a bit of a facetious cat. But it's very true. If you think about jiu-jitsu, whether you're passing or guarding, you need to be able to bring your butt down to your heel, right? And so he was all about full range of motion because he knew that it created the greatest amount of stimuli and muscle recruitment. So it's not that he was a particularly flexible guy, but I actually found it was really interesting that his expectation of his lifters was that they would squat with their butt all the way down to their heels and then all the way up again, even in a back squat.
Right.
That was his
Full
expectation. Full range of motion. And I guess this is the way I'd look at it, guys. This is the analogy I use with people who are really tight. I don't know, ladies may experience this with a dress. I don't know, maybe they've got jeans which have a zipper. Some people just have the button-up fly. There's nothing worse. It could be a bag even, where you've got a zipper and you try to unzip it and it gets stuck. And you can't even, it gets stuck halfway. And you're like, this is bloody useless. If we think about
you're trying to take a whiz and it gets stuck, you're already anticipating like you're going to take a whiz by now.
I don't want to pee on your hands.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it could be embarrassing. No.
So the restaurant.
Anyway, when we get into it, I'm just thinking about something about Mary.
Yeah, scrotum.
Yeah. Anyway, if you don't know about the movie Something About Mary, go out and watch. We won't go too deep on the reference. But essentially, if you think of muscle fibers, actin and myosin, they are like zips. They kind of take and then they let go. Now, if we extrapolate this to like muscle fibers and muscle chains, your muscles have to contract to form tension. They also have to release. If we think about this is a very general analogy, but if you can only zip a zipper halfway down, you're only using half of what you got there. And sure, it might be a really strong, good zip, but you're only using half of it. Now, what we know, and maybe you don't know this because I've done this, I'm like, yeah, if I just force it, the zip will come undone. No, you actually break the zipper because it hasn't got the tolerance for that movement. By improving your flexibility, by spending time stretching, you teach your body to be able to relax at those points in time, and that actually allows you greater access to range of motion, and you get to access more muscle fibers so that when you do contract them and relax them, you're using more of your body. Then when you add load, you are actually strengthening your body more. You're using more muscle fibers under more load through a greater range of motion. You are stronger. That is how you will get stronger, by improving your flexibility. But most people just don't know this at all.
No. The other side of it too that's really important to mention is a lot of the strength training that we do through our program, and that you know, a lot of the great stuff that you see is in fact also stretching.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have these traditional forms of stretching like static holds and stuff and whatever. Then you got the more complex stuff like PNF or dynamic. Like, for folks listening, you're sitting there, straight leg, holding onto your toes. Yeah, that's not much fun for your hammies, right? But then let's like Cossack squat. You're doing like 16 of those in a warm-up. That's a dynamic stretch.
Yeah.
Right? But you could also say it's a strength exercise because you're working the single leg.
It is loaded,
right?
Yeah.
But then let's talk about like a Romanian deadlift or a single leg deadlift.
Yeah.
This is a classic strength exercise, but it is also stretching your hamstrings. It's taking them to full extension while under load.
Yeah.
So then the question is, well, is it more of a strength exercise or more of a strength exercise? The answer is it doesn't fucking matter.
It's both.
Like, it's making you strong and it's making you have more range, i.e. it's making you more flexible.
Yes.
And I've come around to, we've spoken about this in the past, I've come around to now just like the discussion between flexibility and mobility. I almost don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Because it's the same stuff.
It is.
Increasing range and then strengthening that range. And it's done in the best way that we know, through a combination of all of these approaches.
I think the difference here, Joe, is someone who has no idea.
I fucking had it. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
I'm sick of this. Sure, I'm out. Joe walks out of our first podcast ever. He's like, I'm done. No, I think the difference is...
Jules, get in here.
So we'll sub you in. Tag team. No, I think the thing is there's people out there who have no idea. So we've been banging on about this. We've been exposed to this for years and years.
You want me to simmer it back, JT? That's what you're asking.
No, I'm not asking.
You mean take it to white belt town?
Well, of sorts. I'm saying if you're a white belt and you've never done any kind of flexibility training in your life, you've seen yoga. Maybe you did a yoga class because your partner was into it, or you were trying to get with some hot chick who was a yoga instructor. You're like, oh yeah, I could stretch if it takes, whatever it takes. It's not that simple.
Or a hot dude.
Or a hot dude, hey. You get those really charismatic guys. He's got the locks.
Yoga dudes.
Yeah, bro. He's got that little feather earring.
I see those guys on Instagram with the arm tattoos.
Oh,
yeah.
God.
Some kind of ranch.
Yeah.
Mountains in the background. Maybe a hot tub.
God.
Yeah.
Brokeback yoga. Moving forward. I think one of the things is this. If you have no idea, if you can't touch your toes, then that indicates that you haven't spent enough time moving through that range of motion, right? It's just super basic. In the same way, if you can't lift your hands above your head, it will be very hard for you to do like an Olympic barbell snatch.
Yeah.
So what we could safely say is we would look to improve your range of motion before we start chucking weight on you. But the thing with jiu-jitsu is we're like, oh, but jiu-jitsu is fun. I don't care if someone's on my back. I can take that load. Look, when the adrenaline is hitting, there's probably a lot you can do, but on the other side of that, you might be really sore. The difficulty, and I've heard this from someone else the other day, Julian, just wants to do the fun stuff. I don't want to do that unfun stuff. Stretching's not fun, man.
As a young man.
It's not fun. I don't need it in my life. I don't need that negativity in my calves.
Well, this is what a lot of people, I think this is why stretching is often overlooked. And I think it's why classically there's a very lazy approach to it in the strength realm.
Yeah.
Because it's not as fun. You don't get a pump.
Can't post.
You don't get a muscular pump. I don't feel like I'm not growing out of this.
I can't put that on Instagram.
It's kind of like brushing your teeth in a way. There's no benefit from brushing your teeth that night or the next day.
No.
We just all know that if you do it consistently a couple times a day, you will have good dental health for the most part.
Saves you.
So it's sort of one of those things, like if you're like, oh, okay, I got an hour to work out. It's like, should I do some mobility? Nah, do some deadlifts and
biceps,
some pull-ups.
bruh.
And sure, that stuff's really important. We pedal it all the time. Yeah. But the thing is that you will only have so much potential if you are being held back by a range of motion. And when we're saying that, let's just think like generally through the body. So if you're a bit tight in the hips, bit tight in the ankles, bit tight in the shoulders, bit tight in the spine, your whole body doesn't really move that well. Like it can't, because it's restricted through multiple sort of key zones. So you will have like a glass ceiling in terms of your results with any training endeavor. And it's not until you address that stuff that you're like, holy shit, I'm in whole new territory now. Like, wow, jiu-jitsu techniques that I couldn't once do before. Wow, get down to the floor to pick my son up. Wow, I'm putting on more muscle in my squatting. All this new shit opens up, but it's very easy to just avoid it.
Yeah, and the other side of this too is that essentially if you went to any PT and you said, I want to get stronger, they're like, right, you got to lift weights. That's like it's a super basic approach. It's not wrong, but definitely the first time when someone comes to see me and says, oh, I want to get stronger, I go, okay, let's just have a look at how you move. Because a lot of the time,
Chloe.
thank you, Chloe.
Coffee
Shout out.
delivery.
coffee delivery from our contortionist pixie ninja, Chloe. Yeah. Speaking of flexibility,
In it comes.
in she comes, guys. I think the thing is this: a lot of the time, the things holding you back are handbrakes. You take the handbrake off, you can move forward. Immobility and inability to move your body in a very natural way, which we should all be able to do, but society has conditioned us to sit in cars, sit in chairs, blah, 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 means you have these handbrakes on you. Like tight hip flexors from doing jiu-jitsu are a handbrake on hip extension, which means your glutes don't work. Glutes are strong. They're meant to be the biggest, strongest muscles in your entire body, but you've done all this work to like hold them back. You have to do a bit of work to open up that hip so you can actually access this power. And this is one of the things that you are not taught, that you doing certain actions day in, day out is putting a handbrake on your ability to be athletic. And what we're trying to do here is take those fucking handbrakes off and unleash the beast.
Yeah, I mean, most of the feedback we get from people that use our program are like, we've asked our people, right? Like who's doing strength? Like who's using the program mainly for strength? Who's using it for mobility? Who's doing both? And it seems like a pretty even split, right?
It is pretty even.
Right? Like if
there's
people
probably a little bit of a lean towards mobility in terms of, like, actually a good comment from our man, Sushane from
Sub Club.
Shout out.
Poor dude just had COVID. Hope he'll be better by the time this comes out.
He will. He made a really good comment, which was, I want to say strength, but if I didn't do the mobility, I wouldn't have been as good in the strength.
Wow.
Because if he didn't improve his range of motion, he couldn't get as deep in his squats.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, there it is.
That's huge.
And he's not like a personal trainer. He's not an S&C guy. That's just his observation of using the program.
Yeah.
So he actually put mobility above strength because he wouldn't have been able to get as strong if he didn't work on the mobility.
And that's huge.
Case in point.
And I think that like the mobility stuff, for at least how we deliver it in the programs, like it's maybe a bit more accessible for people who are time poor because you can spend 10 minutes after class.
Yeah.
Versus for the gym strength training stuff, you got to go to the gym, we got to be at home.
Yeah.
Got to give it 40 minutes to an hour kind of thing.
Dedicate that time.
But there's another side to strength training that, or to strength training and flexibility that is very specific to jiu-jitsu, and that really doesn't get spoken about much and is certainly not a consideration in other areas of strength, which is connective tissue conditioning.
I was just about to say this.
Right? This is like jiu-jitsu is kind of the only sport in the world
You're trying to
break the other person's connective tissue. Connective tissue is your tendons and your ligaments and your fascia. And these are tissues that are soft tissues, but not muscle, right? And these are the tissues that hold your joints together, and your muscles will work to contract and make a joint move. But these tissues are the ones that bring the stability to the joint. And obviously cannot be overstated how important it is that your connective tissue is strong and healthy when your fucking opponent is trying to destroy it, right? Like while you're awake, like it's happening right now.
Yeah.
So one of the things, like say in bodybuilding training, one of the things that they will do is they will avoid end ranges of their training. So imagine an overhead press, but I will not fully lock my elbow or fully open my shoulder. And then I will come down like, not to the very bottom, but just short. And the reason for that is that I want to keep tension on the muscle because they're trying to maximize muscle growth, right?
Yes.
And actually bodybuilders want small joints because it makes muscle bellies look bigger. So if you're like, I follow a training program that my mate Ronnie down the gym gave me and he's massive, so I'm going to get massive.
Lightweight, baby.
Yeah. Chances are like it's a bodybuilding approach, right? Whereas what we want to do is we want to go to those end ranges in our stretching and in our strength work so that connective tissue can get strong. We're not really that interested in the muscles themselves. We're interested in all of it.
All of it. And time under tension. Here's the thing. Like, let's look at rock climbing just for a second, because I've been kind of low-key obsessed with boulderers and rock climbers for a while because they have the strongest hands, the strongest digits in the world. People are doing single arm pull-ups, single arm levers on their pinky fingers, their whole body weight. It's incredible because their whole thing is their life is in their hands. They spend a lot of time doing hanging, doing flexed hangs, full hangs. They put weight on them. because they're just trying to make the connective tissue stronger. This is applicable to all parts of the body, the time under tension. Now, here's the thing. If you can't even lock your knees out and touch your toes, you're not expressing the full range of your knee and the full range at your hip, right? You're not going through that. Jiu-jitsu will force you there.
Yeah, someone's going to stack you.
Someone's going to stack you and force you there. If your tissues have never had a chance to tolerate that under your own volition, your own control, there's every chance there can be damage there. And if it doesn't occur at those tissues, it might occur as a disc bulge, or it might occur as a muscle belly tear.
Yeah.
Right? So here's the thing. It is worthwhile taking the time to, even though it might be uncomfortable, the great thing about stretching is every kind of repetition, every set you do, it actually gets gradually better. The problem is most people do one set and they're like, oh, that feels fucked. I'm not doing that again. Who wants any of that? But the cool thing is, and I've seen this with my clients too and my students, you do your second set, you're like, oh, it's actually a little bit better. You hit that third set, you're like, oh man, I'm getting more range here. It doesn't mean suddenly you're a gymnast or, you can do the full splits. But even just in one session of trying to improve your ability to move your body, it will get better. And if you spend time there and putting the muscle and the connective tissue under tension, it has been scientifically proven to make your connective tissues stronger and healthier, which is what we do to try and counteract jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it's exactly right. It's a chance for you to access those end ranges. It's a chance for you to get more flexible, but also to get comfortable with the discomfort of this style of training, right? Which is, like we said, there's a whole bunch of different types of stretching work out there, and we've identified that even a lot of strength training is a type of stretching, could be categorized as
loaded stretching.
So, at the end of the day, what's important is that you can use these and that you can get comfortable with the different sensations you feel. It teaches you so much about yourself and your own body. And I think that if you look at how that carries over to jiu-jitsu, it's so significant because you end up in these horrible positions. Like think of those times when someone's stacking you hard and you're refusing to let them pass.
Yeah, you're trying to keep those legs up and keep your guard.
Yeah, and sometimes you have those moments where you're like, man, I don't know, is my leg about to break off?
Is my back gonna explode?
This really feels precarious, but I'm not gonna I'm not giving up. I'm not gonna let them pass. But the point is, in a way, flexibility training allows you to visit these positions when you're not in the heat of the moment, and you can be like, okay, that's what that feels like. Second set. Okay, now okay. If I move my body a little bit, it changes the sensation. Okay, this is starting to really build more awareness of your own body and start to build a better connection with what it's experiencing.
Yeah, and I think that self-awareness is what, for the best part, when you're early in the jiu-jitsu journey, you really lack. And it takes time. It takes years to really build this, that you're like, if they stack me this way, I'm okay. I can hang here. Yeah, I'll eat that pressure. But man, if they just dump me, I got to give it up. Whereas when you don't know, you might try and force it and then you get injured. And it takes getting injured for you to learn, hey, I can't go there. Or I need to work on my range there to be able to put up with that in the future. We want you to avoid the injury. We don't want you to have to take 6 weeks off to learn the lesson. If it's just this simple, guys, if we could just save you the time and the energy, it would be as simple as this. If you've never done stretching in your life at all, and you feel like, I'm a bit stiff, I'm a bit sore, it's actually as simple as getting one good stretch for your hips or one good stretch for your shoulders and trying to do it on a regular basis. I mean, every day would be great, but it doesn't have to be. It could just be something as simple as before class, I'm going to do it, and then after class, I'm going to do it. The benefit of doing it before class is, I'm a bit tighter than usual. I need to pay attention. That self-awareness piece, which means if someone's trying to shoulder lock you, Kimura you or something, you're like, no, stop. You tap early so it doesn't just suddenly, turn into a long-term injury. And stretching after class is really beneficial because your body temperature is really high, and having that elevated body temperature and that adrenaline in your bloodstream allows you to stretch further, which is actually a huge advantage. And then there's all these other cascaded benefits for recovery and everything else which we've talked about. For you, Joe, if you're beginner's access on getting stretching in their life, what would you say?
I think what you said, like, pick one or two, like one for the lower body, one for the upper, and just like make that your thing. Like, these are my go-to stretches, and I do them most of the time. And most of us are on the mats a few times a week, so hey, that's a great place to start. Get there 10 minutes early, do the 2 stretches, get a couple sets before, a couple sets after. Do this for a couple of months, and over time you'll start to experiment with more stretches. You'll, you know what, I really like that. You'll start to take more of an interest. That's when now you're building the habit. This is the most important thing. I think that the people who have the greatest success with flexibility and strength, right, through range of motion. Because here's the thing, when we're talking about strong, I can look at a powerlifter who's doing a half rep back squat with the legs wide, and they're going down just till the hips are just below 90, and up. Yeah, and then back up, and I can appreciate the great strength involved in that.
It's huge.
But really, what gets me more excited is looking at like you deadlifting 200 kilos without really even trying, and then being able to hit the front splits, or like someone doing a set of muscle ups and then jumping straight into a back bend. Or, range of strength, looking at him, pulling huge weights, and then fucking like whatever, putting his toes in his mouth with the, you're like, that is for me, that is truly strong.
Better. Because
you're showing me force production, but then you're also showing me that your body can go anywhere it wants.
Yeah.
And that's like versus like the powerlifter, not to throw shade on powerlifters, but it's just an easy sport to kind of, to hold up as an example here. It doesn't require it doesn't really require much flexibility at all. No. So they've built a sport around like, hey, push the bar from here to here or pull it from here to here, and you're good.
Yep.
So, that's great, but in that environment, but put them on the mats.
Struggle.
Yeah, that person, like they're going to have to do a lot of work to start to build a guard and start to build the ability to move.
You can't have knee wraps on the mat. You can't have a weight training belt on the mat. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's as much as jiu-jitsu is contrived, many of these things that we set as, this is the bar of the epitome of what this is not necessarily what it is. In the same way, like we've been taught forever that Arnold's physique, that's the strength physique. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, he had his physique, but really is that
physique?
Yeah, whatever. But like, big titties on men just equals bad posture. You already have bad posture. We chuck big pecs on you, it's going to be worse. I'll Kimura the shit out of you. I just say that because I'm jealous because I've got no pecs. But what I'm saying there is like strength can be exhibited in many ways. In the same way, like I saw Juji Mufu doing the splits between chairs with 60 kilo barbell above his head. I was like, what is that? That is next level.
Yeah.
Like you see a dude that strong and that flexible, it's like, wow, that is the best of both worlds. And jiu-jitsu requires not one thing, not the other, but both. So I feel like whatever we're trying to do with you guys to give you advice is to steer you down the right path, and getting more flexible will help you get stronger.
Yeah, it's about having well-roundedness. I think that's really what it comes down to. And if you look at like the physical capacities jiu-jitsu demands of you, it's kind of all of them. Mm-hmm. You can build a game around whatever capacities you have, which is one of the benefits of the game. I've seen all sorts of humans develop a jiu-jitsu game when they've, I remember training with a black belt who was like 142 kilograms, obese. Obese. Guy was so overweight. Brazilian dude came over, trained with us back in the day. But he pulled you into his closed guard and it was over. And that was what he did. Everyone just got closed guard and then cross collar choked, or like he hardly moved. But once he closed his ankles and the legs, So beauty of the game is anyone can play.
Yeah.
Right. But if we're trying to take someone and go, hey, this is what's going to give you the best chances of like maximal performance, coordination and body awareness, reduced risk of injuries, also great quality of life. Like it's going to give you the foundation for your greatest possible potential. It's all of this stuff. It's being flexible and being strong. So yeah, going back to your question about like for the beginner, pick a couple of things, make them your thing. Try to assess what it is that you need. So, like you were saying, like touching the toes, like, all right, I don't actually think every human has a responsibility to be able to touch their toes necessarily.
What?
I do. I think that it's something worth trying, but take someone with really long legs. Okay, that might be like, so there's an amount of forward fold they need.
They would also have very long arms, Joe.
It's a good
I'm
point.
not talking about head to toes.
Yeah, no,
Don't
that's-
make excuses for
that's
our
fair
boy
point.
Adam Charles.
No,
He
but-
needs to touch his toes.
But like something that I think is a human responsibility is being able to squat down to the bottom with flat feet on the ground. Like I'm like,
I think less people can do that than touch.
I would agree. It's a very tough goal. But I'm like, if we look at like some of the like something that I know absolutely has huge carryover
help
to
you.
your athletic potential, it's like being able to squat down.
Full range squat.
Yeah, keep a relatively flat spine, like getting to the very bottom there. That says a lot about ankles, knees, hips, spine, right? So in any case, I'm like, try to understand where your limitations are. If it's the shoulders, man, work on your shoulders regularly. If it's, I definitely can't squat down like that. All right, find out why. Is it like your hamstrings are super tight or your ankles are a mess?
Yep.
All right, start to do some work on that. Like if the person can identify what their individual weakness is, that is the shortcut to greater performance.
Yes.
Right? Rather than like chasing something else. It's like the person that's already strong who's like, all right, great, I'm going to go and do more weightlifting. It's like, no, you're already super strong.
Yep.
Let's start to open up a bit more range. That's where the needle's going to get pushed the furthest.
Yeah, for sure.
Big chat. Thanks, fam. Guys, if you want to support the show, I got a few avenues for you. You ready for this?
Please hit us.
You can hit us on Patreon. Here's the first one. Get us on Patreon. You can buy a cup of coffee just like this one, this miniature cup of coffee. JT and I are going to share this after the show. This is a guest from one of our Patreon customers. It was delivered by Chloe today, and you could buy us a coffee like this that we'll get to share after the show one day. Or if you're like, yeah, look, I want to support you guys, but really I'm just interested in getting stronger and more flexible, you should do our program because it's where we put all of the best shit so that you can become your best jiu-jitsu player. Go to bulletproofforbjj.com, start a free trial. You get 1 week where you can use the whole program for free. And when you sign up, use the code BJJ podcast and you'll get 20% off. Get on that. If you need any help, get at us. We'll see you on the next episode.
Peace.